The Jewish Channel's Week in Review, the new Israeli government and how TJC viewers had advanced knowledge of it, an effort to celebrate the Refuseniks, what these Jewish Girl Scouts are celebrating, and more of the Jewish news that's changing your world right now in this episode of the Week in Review. Hello, and welcome to the Jewish Channel's Week in Review. I'm Stephen I. Weiss. The Netanyahu government is over. Long live the Netanyahu government. In a move that surprised many observers of Israeli politics, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has formed a new government that partners his Likud party with what had been the largest opposition party, Kadima. Because the two parties represent a near majority of the vote from the 2009 elections, Netanyahu will be able to rule without worrying about the interests of multiple minor coalition partners, as he had to this point with the far-right Yisrael Beitenu party of Avigdor Lieberman and the ultra-Orthodox Shas party, among others. Kadima is a 7-year-old offshoot of the Likud party that was formed by then Prime Minister Ariel Sharon for Likud members who supported his plan to disengage from Gaza. The two parties coming together, then, is more of a reunification than a new alliance. Besides altering the political makeup of Netanyahu's government, the move also forestalls what had been Netanyahu's plan to hold early elections this September. With the new coalition in place, elections will instead be held a year later in the fall of 2013. While this shakeup came as a great surprise to many, TJC viewers will be familiar with Netanyahu's tacking to the center, which we've been reporting on for many months now. Here's a quick sample. For Netanyahu and Obama, both are facing challenges from their right wing, and in what seems an unprecedented event in modern diplomatic relations, their right-wing challengers joined together this week to send a message opposing conciliation. This is the third major announcement from Netanyahu that has upset the further right-wing members of his coalition in the past 2 months. It's interesting to see all these moves by Netanyahu just as he enters the second half of his 4-year term. Could Netanyahu, like the fallen Ariel Sharon before him, try to grab hold of Israel's center to try to win re-election? And given this week's news about Palestinian statehood, it's very likely that a diplomatic success to forestall the Palestinian statehood bid will further appease centrists while leaving the right wing unaffected. This latest move by Netanyahu, in which he is softening his stance on Palestinians and enraging the right wing of his coalition, could be evidence that Netanyahu, like former Israeli Prime Minister Ariel Sharon before him, is making a move towards the center before his re-election efforts get underway. Sure enough, Netanyahu is indeed tacking to the center in a way not only reminiscent of Ariel Sharon, but by actually partnering with Sharon's old breakaway party. And for the entire coalition, this means that Netanyahu will have the least encumbrances in pursuing his agenda that perhaps any Israeli prime minister has ever enjoyed. With 55 of the 61 seats needed to govern in just the Likud and Kadima parties alone, Netanyahu has to answer to almost no one in the way his predecessors did. The implications of this move for nearly every major policy issue in Israel are quite dramatic. In dropping the far-right Yisrael Beitenu party, Netanyahu will have a freer hand to pursue his agenda in the West Bank and a peace process with the Palestinians. And in dropping the ultra-Orthodox members of his coalition, he'll be able to tackle several thorny issues, including drafting the ultra-Orthodox into the military, combating the increasing gender segregation issues arising from the ultra-Orthodox, and problems related to public schooling. And whatever policy Netanyahu himself wants to pursue with Iran, he is now in a position to do pretty much that. For the Kadima party, which can now continue to hold on to the 28 Knesset seats it won in the 2009 elections, there's the chance to continue to govern with those seats despite precipitous drops in polls suggesting their public support has been cut in half or worse. And now, with the far-right marginalized and a center-right coalition governing unimpeded for the next 18 months or so, the big question heading into next year's Israeli elections is whether Israel's left and its new standard-bearer of former news anchor Yair Lapid can achieve anything like the level of unity that Netanyahu has pulled off for this government. And if you're wondering whether Likud and Kadima have a mandate to rule for another 100 years, well, there's one group that's actually been around for 100 years as of this week here in the States, and that's the Girl Scouts of America. Meredith Gansman found a Jewish troop celebrating the centennial.
As a former Girl Scout, it's an honor for me to celebrate the Girl Scouts' 100-year anniversary with an all-Jewish Girl Scout troop, who for the past 3 years has been making a history of their own.
On my honor, I will try to serve God and my country.
This is the Girl Scout Promise. Since 1912, Girl Scouts have been reciting these ideals.
To help people at all times.
To help people at all times. and to live by the Girl Scout law.
This is Girl Scout Troop 3131, an all-Jewish troop formed in 2009. Inspired by the Girl Scout code, troop leader Sarah Alevsky said developing a troop grew naturally from the family programs she ran at the Chabad of the West Side.
It's things that I felt resonated with what we want to do. At Chabad, the Girl Scouts had similar ideals, and we could combine them and have the girls experience what it's like to be a regular Girl Scout while still experiencing them through a Jewish lens.
Alevsky pointed out one concept in particular that Judaism and Scouting have in common.
Well, there's a concept in Judaism that, Kol Yisrael Arevim Zelazah, every Jew is responsible for one another, and that's like a real important aspect of being a Girl Scout, is learning to communicate with your friends, come up with solutions to problems, to conflicts, come up with ideas that really work together as a team.
When I met with the troop, the Girl Scouts were potting plants with seniors for the rooftop garden at a retirement home. Like any other troop, these Jewish Girl Scouts do service projects for the less fortunate, go on camping trips, and earn badges.
So Shana, what do you like about being a Girl Scout?
I mean, I love all the trips we do and all the fun times and all the mitzvot that we get to do, and, it's experiences that I'll always remember, and it's a lot of fun.
And we just have so much fun time together doing mitzvahs and doing trips.
But unlike most troops, these scouts don't sell the famous Girl Scout cookies. To see why, tune into the full broadcast version of the Week in Review.
Thank you, Meredith. Christian Needon reports on new efforts to celebrate the Soviet Refuseniks.
A group of musicians gathered last week at Carol Studios in Manhattan to sing songs in Russian and Yiddish in preparation for a unique performance here at the Museum of Jewish Heritage on Monday, May 14th. The National Yiddish Theater Folksbiene is staging the concert, Notes from the Underground, to celebrate the museum's current exhibition, Let My People Go, which chronicles the struggle of Jews in the former Soviet Union and the worldwide Refusenik liberation movement. Concert creator Zalman Mlotek said the performance sprang from the spirit of the art exhibit.
In my head, I had an idea right away about what that musical program would sound like based on the exhibit that I saw. And it had to do with, a new sound, which is the sound of golem, which is, probably one of the most exciting klezmer groups around, punk klezmer, whose founder, Annette, is Russian, so she speaks Russian, and so there's a whole Russian theme to their material.
I've worked with Zalman on and off for a long time, and he knows that I'm into Russian music, and so he called me for this, at first to be a singer, and then we had the idea of having the whole band play.
And Mlotek said that the music of both Golem and other singers will hopefully make concertgoers think more about an important era in recent Jewish history.
The Soviet Jewry movement, which basically was the important Jewish unifying event after the creation of the State of Israel and after the '67 war, because it was right on the heels of that, when 3 million Jews were being categorically oppressed to live as Jews. They could not live as Jews. All their schools were closed, their theaters were closed, they were forbidden to listen to any kind of Jewish music, read any kind of Jewish book, any kind.
David Stepanovsky grew up a Jew in the Soviet bloc and is now a cantor at Beth Shalom Conservative Synagogue in Brooklyn, but said he didn't get any early musical training because of his faith.
I don't learn in a music school in Russia. I'm Jewish, a Jewish guy. This is in the time when Stalin was died. It's a terrible time.
He recalled turning to his family for Jewish musical training.
My mom sang the songs, and I was a small boy. I hear the songs. I don't learn the songs from the books. I learn from my mom's voice. This is my way in Yiddish.
To see more from Notes from the Underground, which will be performed on Monday, May 14th at 7 p.m. at the Museum of Jewish Heritage, please tune into the full broadcast edition of the Week in Review.
Thank you, Christian. Finally, last week saw yet another disturbing story of child sexual exploitation in the Orthodox community. But for me personally, this one struck quite close to home. Middle school teacher Evan Zauder of the Orthodox Jewish Day School Yeshivat Noam in Teaneck, New Jersey, was arrested last week for allegedly possessing hundreds of images of child pornography on his computer. There are as yet no allegations that he possessed images of any child he knew personally or that he engaged in physical abuse of any children. I've known Zauder since we were both children. He was a couple of years behind me at our summer camp, a summer camp at which he eventually became a longtime staff member. Since our camp days, I'd run into him every so often when he was a college student doing youth work or as a professional when he became a co-youth director at a synagogue frequented by some family and friends, the Hebrew Institute of Riverdale. In all, Zauder has done youth work at a good number of places where I felt my friends and family were safe, including Yeshivat Noam. I've now been reporting on stories of abuse in the Jewish community for more than 12 years. I started by reporting on the consequences of the very first case to gather a lot of attention in the Jewish community, that of Rabbi Baruch Lanner, whom the New York Jewish Week's Gary Rosenblatt revealed to have been subjecting teens to sexual and violent abuse for decades, while heading youth organizations and high schools. I'd known Lanner too, though only from afar. In the years since, I've considered reporting on abuse and the safety of children my top priority, but never had to report on someone I really knew, and now I have. And what continues to surprise is just how much I never would have guessed it. There was nothing about this man to ever lead me to suspect anything about him. This realization leads me to think that we need to try ever more in our organizations and schools and in our reporting to achieve best practices in advocating for the safety of our community members and children, keeping away from them the harm that can come from within. Now, of course, I need to add the caveat that these crimes are only alleged, and everyone is innocent until proven guilty. But I've never put my heart into those claims with those I didn't know, and won't start to do so now with Evan Zauder. A community is only worth having if it can promise the safety of its members, and the Jewish community, and particularly the Orthodox and ultra-Orthodox portions of that community, still have a great amount of work to do on that front. That's all for this week. From all of us here at the Jewish Channel, be well. The Jewish Channel is available on cable. Time Warner Cable Channel 528, IO Optimum Channel 291, RCN Channel 268, Bright House Channel 330, Verizon Fios Channel 900, Cox Channel 1, Frontier Communications, and now on Comcast Cable in the on-demand menu under Premium Channels. For more information, visit tjctv.com.